In this tutorial, we're going to give you an introduction to drawing vectors in the software. We're going to look at how we can create shapes, we're going to look at how we can draw lines and curves, and talk about some of the settings we have available to us in order for us to snap to various items within our job for easier drawing. So let's go and close out. Okay, so let's start by creating a new file. So we're going to go with a width of 10 inches, a height of 10 inches, and then we'll just go ahead and press OK here. So we're going to give you an overview of the drawing tools. Now the drawing tools can all be found within the drawing tab on the design side of your interface. And in particular, we're going to be looking at some of these options here, enabling us to create vectors. So we're going to start by looking at drawing up some basic shapes. So here you can see we've got the option to draw a circle, an ellipse, rectangle, polygons and stars. Let's start by looking at draw the circle. Okay, so in our draw the circle form, we have a few options here. We have an area where we can specify the center point of our circle. So in this case, we could go ahead and put x2, y8 in this instance. And then we need to specify the radius or the diameter for that circle. So let's say we want the radius of this circle to be 1 inch, and we want that center of the circle to be positioned at x2, y8. All we need to do is simply go ahead and press create, and the software will input that circle based on this information into our 2D view. Another way to draw a circle is by specifying your radius or diameter again, where this time you can actually choose to just drop that in wherever your cursor is. That's where the center of your circle will be. So for example, we can click and it will apply that circle to the position that we clicked within our job. Another option what we could do is we could look at manually drawing our circle by simply using your left mouse key, and using your mouse you can drag that and you can see we can get different sizes here. You'll notice that next to my cursor we're displayed the actual radius, so that's handy to know what the radius is here. And if you like what you've got, you simply let go and then the software will input that in for you. Another option is to look at shortcut keys. For example, if I knew a specific radius or diameter that I wanted my circle to be, I could simply start by dragging out my circle to begin with. And let's say I wanted a circle that is 3 inches in diameter. I could then type in the value 3 on the keyboard. You'll see at the bottom we've got that value displayed there, followed by the letter D for diameter, and then the software will create a circle that is 3 inches in diameter. Now if you wanted to use the radius, then you'd put the letter R in there instead. Okay, so let's just close out of the form. I'm just going to drag a box just using the left mouse button, and anything within my box selection here will be selected when I let go. So you can see those 3 vectors are now highlighted, and then using the delete key on the keyboard, we're just going to delete them. Next up, we're going to look at the next tool in our set of shapes, and that's the Draw the Ellipse tool. So if we click on that, that's going to open up the Draw Ellipse form. So it's slightly different to the Draw Circle form. We have a little bit more information in terms of our anchor point. So this is where we specify the anchor point of our ellipse. So if we set that to the center, that means whatever we draw out will be anchored to this center point. So our X and Y positions will be on the center of our ellipse. We can specify the actual coordinates here. So for example, let's say we wanted to create an ellipse that is in the center point is going to be 5 in X, 5 in Y, so in the dead center of our job there. And then we could specify the width and height. So for example, we could say I wanted a width of 4 and a height of 2. Go ahead and press create and it will create that for us. Another way, again, what we could do is we could simply just draw out our ellipse like so if we wanted to. And you can see you can just draw it. And again, we're given width and height information next to our cursor, which is super handy. So that enables us to see what the exact sizes we've got there are. Okay, so let's just close out here. We're just going to take those two vectors again and we're just going to delete them. So next up, let's take a look at the Draw Rectangle tool. Okay, so in the Draw Rectangle form, okay, so a bit more information here. So again, similar to the Ellipse tool, we've got an anchor point. So we've looked at the center anchor point. So let's take a look at a different anchor point this time. So this is based on the actual bounds of the shape. Now, for the rectangle, it's going to be the corners. For any other shape, like the ellipse, imagine a rectangle surrounding that shape. That is your bounding box, okay? So, for example, if we wanted to draw our rectangle with the anchor point position in the top left hand corner, and we wanted that at x5, y5, and then we could put in a width and height here. We could go with 3 and 3 to create a square. We could go ahead and press create and it will create that. So it's based out on the top left hand corner here being at position x5, y5. And then you could change that if you wanted the lower right hand corner over here. Again, same. If we press create, you'll see how it's doing that there. Okay, so let's just press Control Z just to undo that. Okay, again, if we could just go to the center here, you can just think about just pulling out your shape. So when you pull out the actual rectangle, it's going to pull it from the top left hand corner. And then likewise, if you're pulling from the bottom right, it's going to go from the bottom left hand corner. If you go from the bottom right over here, it's going to pull up towards the left hand corner like so. Okay, so wherever you drag, whichever direction you choose, that's the kind of anchor point. If you wanted to create a rectangle or a square that pulls out from the center, simply hold down the Alt key and then pull that out, and it will just create that based on your center point wherever you clicked that initially. Okay, so let's just take those, delete those, and we'll just go back into the rectangle tool there. Okay, so we've got some further options. We can look at creating a radius external, radius internal corners. So far we've demonstrated how to do that with the square corners, but we also have the option to create radius corners. So for example, we could put in a radius of 0.5 here, drag a shape out, and it will create a shape like so. We can further edit those radius corners by simply editing the value here, or we could look at pulling on those green handles like so. And you'll notice that as we get to the extents of the radius, it then turns into an internal corner like so. Okay, and you'll see that this is now highlighted, and again we could put in here a value if we wanted to, like so. Okay, so let's just go back to square, and then we'll go ahead and create another shape. So another way of creating a shape is by using the shortcut keys. So we can simply drag. So similar to how we did with the circle earlier with the diameter and the radius, we can create rectangles or squares based on the width or height, where you simply enter in your value. For example, if we wanted to make a rectangle that had a width of 4, we type in 4 followed by a comma, followed by the height value, which let's say is 2 in this case. And then we'll go ahead and press enter on the key. And here we have a rectangle that has a width of 4 and a height of 2. Okay, now for more information about shortcut keys, there's lots of information here under your help options for keyboard shortcuts, where it will list lots of different shortcut keys that are available in the software, and in particular for creating shapes like we have done here. Okay, so let's just close out here. We're actually going to delete this vector here, and we'll just move that one down over to position over there. So next up, we're going to look at creating a polygon. So we're going to click on that. Let's go to open up the Draw Polygon tool. Okay, so first off, we specify the number of sides. To do that, you can use the down arrow, up arrow keys, or you could simply input a number using the keys on your keyboard. And we specify the center point. So the center point where you want the center of your polygon to be in relation to your actual job space. So for example, if we wanted our polygon to be in the center, we could put that at X5, Y5. And we specify the radius of the polygon. Okay, so imagine a circle surrounding that. This is your radius. For example, let's just go with 1 inch there. And then a side length, we can actually specify the side length of the actual polygon as well. So if we wanted to be specific, we could go in and say, actually, I'd rather figure out my polygon based on the actual lengths of the sides rather than the radius, and you'll see that the radius value is actually updated according to this value we've got in here. We could go ahead, press create, and that will create that. Again, we can look at drawing that out manually or simply clicking and dropping those shapes in. So let's just close out here. We'll just delete these, and then we'll just go ahead and press delete. Then we'll look at our next shape, which is the star tool. So if you go into the draw star option, here we have a similar to the pentagon, we've got a number of points. So again, use the arrows or type in the value, specify our center point. Okay, so here let's just go with 5 by 5 in there. Specify the outer radius. Okay, so that's the outermost radius of the actual star, so where all the points would form a circle. So here let's just go with 3 in this case, and then an inner radius percentage. So we've got a percentage here that's going to specify the internal radius of the internal points of that star. Okay, and again, you can just use the arrow keys, or you could simply type in a value. Go ahead with those options and press create, and you'll see what happens there. Again, if we just mess around with the inner radius and press create again, create a new shape there based on that inner radius, so you can see that inner radius is smaller than the one we just created there. And again, we can use the click option to actually drop that in, and whilst it is highlighted, we could actually change some of these options. Let's say I wanted to make that 2 and 75, and then here you're getting a sort of pentagon shape here. Again, let's just go here, 50, apply, and you can see how easy it is to make those changes. Okay, so let's just close out, and then what we'll do is we'll just delete some of these by selecting them and deleting them. Select that one and delete it, and then we'll just take this one and we'll just look at shrinking that down ever so slightly, like so. So there we've looked at how to draw various shapes in the software. Now we can look at drawing lines and curves. So we're going to start by looking at the Polyline tool. Okay, so the Polyline tool just enables us to create a series of straight points, which will ultimately create lines that we could then turn into Bezier curves if we wanted to, and we'll look at that shortly. Okay, so to create a line, we could specify where we want our point to be. So for example, if we wanted our first point to be at x0, y0, we could put 0, 0 in here, use the add option, and you'll see it's pulled a line out from the bottom here. And then we could specify the angle or the line length for our next position. So for example, we could say we wanted the angle here to be 90. You'll notice that our handy cursor actually displays that information for us there. And we can also specify the length. So for example, if we wanted that to be 5, we could put 5 in there, press add, and it will create that line based on the information that we put here. Okay, the most easiest way to use this tool is by simply just using your mouse and clicking exactly where you want that information to be. To undo part of your polyline, just simply press the backspace key like so. And again, if you wanted to just draw a new line, you can do. You can just simply draw like so over here, and then you can just simply snap that into place, and now you've got a new shape. Okay, we're just going to press Ctrl Z on that. Now with our Polyline tool, and not only our Polyline tool, but when we're actually picking up objects in the software and other drawing tools, we're able to snap to other items or other areas within our job space. So let's just take a moment to talk about that. So we're going to go over to Edit, and we're going to go over to our snap options over here. So here we have various options to control the snapping in the software, which will ultimately help in drawing and aligning our vectors. Okay, so here at the top we've got various options. So we've got display text at cursor, so we've seen that, you know, just generally when we move our cursor around. Also when we create the lines, we saw the angle and the length of that line during the polyline mode then. When we're drawing out circles, it'll tell us the diameter of that. So we've seen all of that. You can toggle that on and off if you wanted to. We have the option to snap to guides. So our guides, if we just OK out of this, our guides actually live on the left and top of our interface. And if we just come out of the Polyline tool, we can just click on the rule, and we can just drag out a guide like so. And we can drag a guide down. You can drag as many in as you want to, like so. And these are just useful for us to actually be able to snap to various points, as well as being able to follow along if you wanted to create various shapes with the help of the guides. So the Polyline tool, you can see we can snap to the guides there, you can snap to this point over here. And you'll see that my cursor always changes when we're actually on the actual guide itself. Okay, so we'll just close out, just going to delete that, and then I'm just going to temporarily hide the guides by pressing on this button over here. Okay, so let's just go back into the snap options there. Okay, so you notice snap to guides is now turned off. Okay, so that's just because we toggled it off. Okay, so we can click on that again and it will display those guides. Just for you to be aware of, if you wanted to delete a guide, you can simply right click on a guide and use the option to delete guide. Okay, if we go back to our options there, we also have an option here to snap guides to geometry. So that's automatically on. Okay, so that is enabling us to be able to snap the actual guide to geometry that we have within our job. Okay, and that will be enabled when we switch this option on, okay, which we'll talk more about shortly. Obviously with that option on, you could also turn this off if you didn't want to snap your guides to geometry. So then we have the option to snap to grid. So with this option on, so I'm just going to turn the guides off for a moment, and then we're going to snap to grid. Okay, so you'll see we've got lots of dots here. You can alter the grid spacing, and the grid spacing at the moment is currently between each dot is 1/2 inch, which is useful. You can change that if you wanted to by entering that information in there. And so that just means that if we go into the Polyline tool, we're now able to actually draw, and you'll notice we're able to snap to each dot that we have in our grid, which can be very useful if you're wanting to make, you know, very accurate spaced points within your drawing. Okay, so let's just close out of there, and we'll go back into Edit, and we'll go into the snap options. You have the option to snap job center and corners, so that's the center of the job and the actual corners of your job as well, which can be handy. We've got the option to then alter a fixed nudge distance. So this distance that you specify in here, when you hold down Control and Shift and you're moving something around, it will move it in those kind of fixed distances or nudges. So if we had an object that we wanted to move by 0.125, we could select that object. So if we press Control and Shift and then use the arrow keys, it actually moves that at a fixed distance for us there. So let's go back into the snap options. Okay, so at the bottom here we have the snapping radius. So this is the pixel radius, and it will kind of adjust how close the cursor must get to a vector or geometry in order for us to actually snap to it. So using the actual slider here, you can see what that pixel radius looks like. Okay, and you'll see with large, it's much more of a bigger radius. If you're in close proximity within the 16 radius, then you're going to be able to snap to something. Okay, so it all depends on, you know, how large or how small you want to set that radius to. So have a play with that. I liked mine set just in the center there. Okay, then over to the right we have a geometry snapping, and we also have smart snapping. So let's start with our geometry snapping. Okay, so geometry snapping allows us to snap to various points in our geometry. So let's have a look at some of these options. So we've got object centers, that's the centers of objects. We've got endpoints, we've got span midpoints, arc centers and intersections. So let's take a look at those. So we're just going to actually switch off the snap grid. Now, an easy way for us to do this is at the top view bar here. We have the option here to toggle off our snap grid. Okay, so click that goes on, click it, that goes off. Right then, so let's just go back into our Polyline tool. Okay, so you can see here I'm able to snap to the center of our objects, and you'll see a dot comes up there. We've got a target, so you can see how a cursor changes according to the item that we're actually snapping to. Also have endpoints. Okay, so you can see we can snap to the endpoints. Again, my cursor changes to display that. We've got midpoints, that's the midpoint of a span. So if I run my cursor along here, when we get to the midpoint of that span, you can see the cursor has changed there. It's telling us we're able to snap to that point. We've got arc centers. So for example, if we run that across, we should get to the center of that arc, which is here, right there. We should have another one over here as well. Likewise over here and here. And we also have intersections. So if we zoom in, you can see it's snapping there. It's also snapping here where the two vectors are actually intersecting. And this is really useful for us to be able to snap to various points within our job. For example, you can snap here, you can snap to an endpoint, and then we could go ahead and we can look at closing that off. Let's right click to get out of the Polyline tool. I'm just going to take that vector there and we're going to delete it using the delete key. Let's go back into our snap options here. Okay, so then we have the option for smart snapping. So if we switch smart snapping on, so this is very powerful in that it enables us to snap to lines and extensions which don't necessarily exist as geometry, allowing us to create accurate vectors where we minimize the need to really create construction geometry. So we have various options here. We can snap to object bounds, so the bounds of an object, the horizontal and vertical for the object. We've got tangents as well, so it can pick up tangent lines. It can also pick up lines that are perpendicular to tangents as well from the nodes and midpoints. Span geometry. And I've also got the option to adjust the angle increments. So currently we have an angle step of 15 degrees and we can alter that if we wanted to. So we could put that at 30 or whatever angle it is. I think 15 is quite fair here. So we could go ahead and press OK and we'll take a look at some of those options. Okay, so we'll go into the Polyline tool to demonstrate some of those. Okay, so using my cursor, if we come over, okay, so now we've got smart snapping switched on, you can see we've got a series of blue lines. Now these lines represent the bounds of an object that is nearby, okay, and every time we hover over a new object, it just wakes up those bounds. So here we've got the star, so now when I come up, we should see the bounds of that star, and you can see we've got lots of different things that we're able to actually snap to. So blue blue is the actual object bounds in there. Okay, we've also got horizontal and vertical. So here we go, we've got vertical, we've got horizontal elements just by moving your cursor, and it's just about moving your cursor across all of the geometry that we have here, and it will wake up those lines that the software might think that you might want to, connect to or start drawing from to help you set up your drawing. Okay, so in terms of our circle here, so here again we've got the center, we've got lots of different lines here. So if we just start by drawing here, if we move our cursor, take a look at the A, that's telling us the actual angle that we're going to be drawing from. Okay, and then again, if we move down, you can see we've got different angles, and we are moving that in increments of 15 degrees. Right then, so we're going to look at kind of snapping to tangents here. So if I bring my cursor down, and if I just actually press T on the keyboard, it actually snaps that to the actual tangent that we've got there. And then if we pull out, you can see we've got a line here that's actually perpendicular to that tangent, and we can see that right angle there, and we can click like so. So there's lots of different ways for us to actually, just draw up. We can also look at, if we just press the space bar just to create a new line, we can also look at creating a new point between 2 points. So here you can see I wake this point up here by hovering over that point, wake this point here by hovering over that point, and just kind of backtrack on myself. We can see we've got the midpoint between 2 points, and I'm able to then start my drawing like so. And again, we can do that over here and over here, and you can see how useful all of these different points are in order for us to actually create our different vectors. So let's just close out the Polyline tool. We're actually just going to select everything and we're going to delete it. So next up, we're going to look at how to draw an arc. Okay, so we have the option to specify exact precise values here, so setting your start and end positions. So for example, we could say we wanted that to start at x2, y2, and wanted to finish that at x7, y2. And then we could set the radius. For example, let's just go with the value we've got in here, 4.3. Go ahead and press create, and it will create that for us. Okay. Easy way to do this is to either kind of draw this manually. So three points. So through 3 points, we just need to left click in the 2D view to set the start point of our arc. And then we just drag out our cursor to find the end point of our arc. In which case then we're able to then, just using the mouse, just moving that, we can specify the radius for that arc there, like so. Okay, I'm just going to switch off the smart snapping options here just so you can see this a little clearer without all of those useful, helpful guides showing up. The other option is center, start and end. Okay, so this time we specify the center of our arc, and if we draw out, you can see the radius here. We can see those values are actually being shown to us as well, and then we can click that, and then we can simply draw in our arc like so. And if we wanted to edit that, we can always edit that by altering the values over here as well. Okay, so let's just close out, we'll take those and then we'll go ahead and delete them. Next, we're going to look at the Draw Curve tool. Okay, so that actually doesn't open up a form, but instead we're able to just draw curves with our cursor. So the way this works is you click and that will create a line, and then when you click next, it's actually going to, once we click after this point, it's going to turn that into a curve. Okay, so you can see it's now like a Bezier here. And then here we can click again. So it's very similar to the Polyline tool, except rather than creating straight points, we're actually able to create curved points like so. If you didn't like a span you just created, you can always press the backspace key to undo that, like so. Okay, and then we're just going to go back into the Polyline tool where I just want to demonstrate how you could make a curve from the polyline. So here you can see we've got a series of spans that I've just created, and if you go to node edit mode by pressing N on the keyboard, you can see that those nodes are now visible to us. So each point is a node, okay? And if we right click on the point, you can see we have the option to smooth the point. We can smooth the point here and we can smooth the point there. We're then able to adjust the handles to really smooth out that shape if we were required to. Okay, so if we just take that, I'm just going to delete it. Okay, so next up we're going to look at the freehand drawing tool. So to help us demonstrate this tool, we're actually going to bring in a bitmap. So we've got a snowman here, so we just make that a little bit bigger. And with that selected, we're going to go into the freehand drawing tool. Now this tool enables us to, as it says, freehand draw. So we just kind of use our mouse or a tablet. If you are using a tablet, this tool actually works best with a tablet, as you have much more control over your wrist movements. When you are using a mouse, your wrist movement is actually quite restricted. However, I am demonstrating this with the mouse, so we're just going to zoom in over here. And so we'll just do a little bit of a drawing to begin with, and then we'll kind of discuss some of the points here. So to start your drawing, you simply click like so, and then just using your mouse, just simply drag that around, and you can see we're able to actually draw the snowman's head. So I'm just following the line here, and you can see where my cursor is at the end of the circle. That's kind of what I'm following, but really what happens, what it's actually drawing is from that center point, so you can kind of see a tail there. And if we get to the end and if I press tab, it will close that drawing off for me, and you can see how easy it was to actually create that vector there, and how smooth the actual vector is as well. So various options here to help us actually draw using this tool. We've got smoothness setting. So the smoothness setting actually helps with the post smoothing of your vectors. So for example, if we stick that to a minimum here, we're going to draw our circle for our eye here. If you just tab to close that, and if we set that to large, smoothness over here, we're going to draw a circle over here, and if we tab to close that, if we close out and just select both of those and then press N on the keyboard, you can see there's more points in this version where we had minimal smoothness applied, and there are less points in our part where we had maximum smoothness applied. So depending on the sorts of vectors you want to create, then adjust the slider accordingly. Generally, you want kind of less points within your actual drawing, but again, it is all dependent on the actual part that you are tracing or drawing. Okay, so let's go back into the form over here. So now we'll look at the stabilize option. So this setting actually helps us to stabilize the cursor for a more accurate drawing. So the circle stabilizes how much you have to drag before it tries to work out the intended path. So if we just shrink that right down to kind of minimum stabilization, you'll see we don't see a circle anymore, and we're able to kind of just draw as we wish, like so. And then again, we could press tab to close that off. With maximum stabilization, what the cursor does is it tries to help us. So here we've got that circle, and so here if we actually find something to trace, so let's trace the carrot here. So if we start drawing, you'll see that it's actually helping me stabilize that, and I can bring that down. And I'm looking at the center, literally where the black line is that we just drew. You can see this tail is actually helping me move that around. Okay, so here, like so, and then over here to drag that around, like so. then we can let go. Okay, so if we put that on minimum stabilization and we'll try and follow that along, you'll see that you know, more prone to my wobbles here without that stabilize. Okay, I've pressed tab there, so it's actually joined that to the start point there. So just going to right click, we're going to take that and we're just going to delete it there. We're going to go back into the freehand drawing tool. Okay, if you want to resume your drawing, so just going to put the stabilization to the center, also going to put smoothness to the center there. And if I press Control, we can actually snap to that endpoint and then resume our drawing like so. And then again, we can just go ahead and press Tab to close that off. We've got the option here to end vector at cursor. So currently, if we just zoom in, we can try and see what we've got here. So if we go with a larger stabilization, so we've got a bigger radius here. Okay, so you can see when I'm drawing, the drawing doesn't actually start until I've reached the end of the actual circle there. Okay, and you can see it's drawing, and if I let go, it ends in the middle of the circle. What this option does, it enables you to end at your cursor. So we'll click here. Again, if I click on, so we're still starting from the center, but when I finish my point here, where my cursor is right at the end of that circle, it's going to finish the vector there. So this is just a personal preference, and we can just turn that off if you wanted to. So have a play with this. There's various options, and you'll get a feel for what settings kind of work well for you. We also have the option to adjust the actual bitmap whilst you're in the freehand drawing tool. So with that bitmap selected, if you go into the freehand drawing tool, this is super handy for you to be able to actually adjust the bitmap whilst you're in here, so that you can kind of get an idea for how things look without having to exit the form and then right click on the bitmap and adjust the fade in there. You can actually feel by adjusting up and down the fadeness right within the actual form itself. Okay, so that's pretty much that. So let's just close out here. Okay, so that pretty much concludes this tutorial where we've looked at how we can create shapes and lines and curves. We've also looked at the very helpful snapping options as well. And you're going to see a lot of these tools used throughout all of the other tutorials as well. So that completes this tutorial. Thank you for watching.